everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video I have my mid-November wrap-up for you. So this is going to be every book that I have read since the beginning of November. And it's kind of a lot because I've been some days going through 2 or 3 books a day, and because I've been listening to a lot of audiobooks. So there's, like I said, going to be probably a lot, and there'll probably be even more in the second half this month. So let's just get into it. So I know I mentioned this in my October wrap-up, but I want to mention it again. I say a lot in these videos that I read, this book for a specific video, and I said that I'm going to be stopping that. Pretty sure this is the last video where I'm going to say that because I have now basically got everything ready to go for the rest of the year. So I will say that a couple times in this video, just going to warn you ahead of time, but other than that, this will be it for that. So I'm sorry, but here we go. The first book I read was Hush Hush by, I think it's Lucia Franco. I've been trying to figure out how to pronounce his name for a while. And this one, like I said, for another video. And I wasn't really sure how I felt going into this one. I didn't really know anything about it. I'd never really seen it anywhere. And I picked it up for this video that I'm doing, and I actually really like this one. I gave it, I think, 4 stars, but I will say those 4 stars are solely for the entertainment value of this book. It's a little bit crazy. It's an age gap book, but the age gap is ginormous. The girl in this I think is 21 and the guy is in his 50s, and she is working basically as a really high-end escort and meets him through that sort of, and she's not supposed to fall for a client or anything like that, and obviously she ends up doing that. But this book just had a something in it that really just made the whole book for me, because I did not see it coming, and I am someone who I feel has a pretty good radar now of when things are going in a certain direction in a book, and this one just came out of nowhere for me, so I really liked that. And like I said, I will be talking about this more in a future video. Next was No Tomorrow by Carian. This is another one for the same video, and this one I didn't love. I gave this one 3.5 stars. It is about a guy who is a musician, and it starts out the book where he is homeless and living in a park with his dog, and this girl is visiting this park on her lunch break basically every day. She goes there to sit and read and whatever, and she starts noticing him, and they start talking and hanging out, and she goes to see him and things, and it sort of progresses from there. They start hooking up and different things, but it spans 10 years, I think, the book, and it follows this guy who basically ends up disappearing, and then years later she hears him on the radio and realizes that he's the lead singer in this huge band and has blown up, but he's got all these drug problems and mental health issues and all of these things that are just sort of making it impossible for them to get back together. And I really liked his side of the story. I liked how they showed his thought process and how it was affecting him. I didn't love hers because I sort of felt she just kind of sat around for 10 years, and just every time this guy called she was waiting for him, which was kind of annoying because it was literally 10 years, and I didn't like that part, which was what I think made my rating so much lower. Was I just felt that part was a little unrealistic, and to sort of balance out the way that I felt the guy's part was done so well, I felt hers wasn't done justice. Next, I read The Sweetest, Oblivion by Danielle. This one is a mafia romance. This one is pretty popular, I think, on TikTok, and it is, again, a mafia romance where this girl actually falls for her sister's sort of arranged marriage fiance kind of thing, but it's really hate to love, and I really love that. I gave this one 4 stars. I don't know that it's worth all the crazy hype that it's getting, but it was really good. And I liked their sort of banter at the beginning when they really hate each other and he's engaged to the other girl, and I just really liked the sort of evolution of this book. I do think I'm going to continue on with this series because I did like it that much. Next was All the Little Lies by S.J. Sylvis, and this one is a bully romance. I read this one recently, obviously, and this one is about a girl whose dad is killed and her mom just doesn't handle it well. She becomes a drug addict and eventually loses custody of the daughter, and so she's now living in a foster home and is back at this high school where her best friend from when they were kids is going to school, but he now hates her and she can't figure out why he hates her. I feel this is a really common theme in bully romances, is the the childhood best friends that disappear and then come back and hate each other. But he just like hates her. He blames her for his mom's death, and she can't figure out why, because she's like, I had nothing to do with that, I wasn't there. Like, she has no idea why he's so mad about this and how he even has made this connection. And so this one was really good. I did really like this one. I think I gave this one 4 stars as well. One of the things I liked about this is that I find in bully romances, they're always classified as dark romances, but I find sometimes once the bullying sort of stops, it just becomes like a very simple romance, and this one didn't do that. It still had a lot of darker elements even after they sort of get together, and I really liked that part of it because, like I said, I feel like that doesn't happen too often. Next, I read King of Campus by Jennifer, I think it's pronounced Sucevic. I thought it was Sucevic for the longest time, but I'm pretty sure the audiobook did not say that. And this one I actually DNF'd, but not because I wanted to DNF it. I was listening to this one on Scribd, which I've been like using the 1-month free trial of, and not gonna lie, it kind of sucks because like this book in particular, the ending was just missing. Like the audiobook just ended like I think like 3/4 of the way through the book, so I have no idea how this one ends. Can't really tell you, but it was basically like a very sort of traditional like football player and dancer romance, and I wasn't like overly invested in it, so like I just sort of was like, okay, when the audiobook ended, I probably would have given this 3 stars if I had made it to the end, maybe 3.5 depending on how the ending went, but like I said, I don't know how it ends, so I can't tell you that. Next, I read Recommended for You by Laura Silverman. This is a YA romance, and I was actually surprised. This one is actually a holiday romance, which you wouldn't know looking at the cover of it, but it is, which I think is kind of cool because obviously you're reading a lot of those now in November. And this one follows a girl who works at a bookstore, and the bookstore is having this like sale to whoever can like get the most sales wins $250, and she needs to fix her car. And she's spending all her time at the store because her moms are always arguing and whatever, so she's like sort of made this store her home, and she's like really passionate about recommending books and whatever. And then this guy shows up and starts working there, and he is like, yeah, I don't read. And she's like, how can you work at a bookstore if you don't read? And gets all annoyed at him because he's suddenly like making as many sales as her, even though he like has never read any of these books in the store. So she's like, how are you recommending these people when you literally don't know like what they're about? And it's them sort of competing, and then obviously sort of an enemies to lovers kind of vibe going on here. I gave this one 3 or 3.5 stars. I honestly can't remember, but I liked it. But like YA is just like not really for me so much. And also with this one, I felt like it was really strange because I felt like everyone in the book hated the main character at the beginning, and it was just like this weird vibe I got, like that wasn't even part of the book, that like everyone was supposed to hate her, but I just felt like everyone was pretending to like her, which was like such a weird, you know, thing reading a book, and so that was one of the things I also didn't vibe with this one. Next, I read All I Want for Christmas by Wendy Loggia. I'm sure that's not how you pronounce that last name, but I have no idea how you do. But this one is actually really cute. I didn't know this was a YA book when I picked it up. It's a YA Christmas romance, obviously, and I think this is probably the most festive book that I've read. It's very much like in-your-face Christmas, and it does sort of have like a Hallmarky kind of vibe to it. I did really like this one for what it was. I think if you're looking for something like Christmas cheery, this is it for you. I gave this one 3 stars, mostly because this one has a love triangle in it that I didn't love, and I also didn't really love who she ended up with or the reasoning why she ended up with them, so I wasn't a huge fan of that. But I do think if you're looking for something that you just want like cozy Christmas vibes, like this is the book for you. So I really liked this one for that, but like I said, didn't vibe with the love triangle. Next, I read Verity by Colleen Hoover, and this one is also for that same video. You probably know what it is, it's so obvious because all of the books I think for that video are in this one. And I loved this book. I was not expecting to love this book. I was actually dreading reading this book because I knew I had to read it for this video I want to do. And I remember telling myself, I was like, I have, you know, like a week left on my library loan of this book, and there's like a huge wait list, so I was like, okay, I'm just going to start reading a couple chapters a night and then I'll get through it, you know? And so I started this book one night at like 5 o'clock at night and was like, okay, I'll start it, you know, I'll move on with my life. I ended up until 3 o'clock in the morning that night finishing this book because I could not put it down. This book is insane. I will say, like, I went into this book knowing nothing. Like, I knew I was going to read it for this video, so I didn't even bother reading the synopsis at all, so I had no idea what I was getting into. Literally all I knew was that it was like a thriller as opposed to a romance, but I think Colleen Hoover did a really good job of still like embedding the romance into the thriller aspects of this book. I'm not going to tell you anything about this book because I literally think you should just pick it up blind, because I think that made the entire book for me. Like, it was so insanely good. I gave this one 5 stars, and like I said, I wasn't not expecting to like this at all, so 100% recommend this one. Next, I read White Smoke by Tiffany D. Jackson, and I was really excited for this one. I know it was really popular, like, pre-Halloween. A lot of people were reading this one. It's a YA sort of, like, haunted house kind of book, and I love that. Like, as a kid, one of my favorite shows was Scooby-Doo, and things like this just always kind of remind me of that. And I wrote this in my review, and I actually thought it was really funny, because I watched Riley Marie's wrap-up, I think it was, where she talks about this book as well. And she says in her video that she thought her audiobook cut off because the ending in this book is so abrupt, and I literally wrote that exact same sentence in my Goodreads review a few days before when I posted it, and I thought that was hilarious because I listened to this on audio, and I found the beginning of this book really slow. Like, I wasn't vibing, I wasn't really interested, I didn't really care about what was going on. And then towards the end, it starts to get a lot more interesting and things start happening, but like literally right as you get into sort of like the most exciting part of everything, it just like ends out of nowhere. And I don't know if they're making like a second book or something, if that's why that was like that, but I've literally never read a book where I genuinely thought my audiobook was cut off or I was like missing a part of the book, because it was just so like randomly cut, I feel like. And I gave this one, I think, 3.5 stars because, like I said, I did love the part of the book that I loved, but the beginning was slow, and because it cut off before I felt like the ending was even really done, I didn't love that. So, like I said, 3.5, 3 stars for this one as well. Next, I read Love Her or Lose Her by Tessa Bailey. Actually, I'm going to talk about these 2 books together. I also read Tools of Engagement by Tessa Bailey, and these are the second and the third book in the Hot and Hammered series. I really liked both of these. I thought they were really good. I gave them both 4 stars. I think Tools of Engagement was probably my favorite one. Love Her or Lose Her is a marriage and trouble romance, and Tools for Engagement is sort of like a single parent kind of romance, I guess. And I just really like both of them. They're obviously like a continuation of the fixer-up sort of couples, so I don't want to talk too much about what happens in the books because, you know, you want to read them in order so you don't like ruin anything. But I read those 2, gave them both 4 stars, loved them both. Next, I read Learn My Lesson by Katie Robert, and if you watched my TikTok Made Me Read It number 4, the dark romance one, you know that I didn't love Desperate Measures. I don't know what it was about it. Well, actually, I do know what it was about it, and I talk about it in that video. If you want to watch that, I'll link it down below. But I wasn't sure I was going to vibe with this series after that one because I didn't love it, and Neon Gods wasn't really my favorite either. But I gave this one 4 stars. I think this was like significantly better than Desperate Measures, and honestly I like this better than Neon Gods as well. I think it was just a lot better done. I liked that you got to see a lot more of the other characters from like what I assume is like the next books. Like there's Aurora and Tink and like a bunch of different people in this one, and I liked that you get to see sort of them around before their books come along. And so yeah, like I said, liked this one a lot better than the first one, so I will probably be continuing on with this series at some point, probably not right away because my library doesn't have the audiobooks for the rest of the series, so I'll have to figure that out. But I did really like this one. Next was The Baller by Vi Keeland, and this one I gave, I think, 3.5, 4 stars. I really liked this one. It's about a sports reporter who starts interviewing this guy, and basically in her first interview with him in the locker room, he's wearing just a towel, and while she's interviewing him, he drops the towel. But because the camera is like from the waist up, no one knows what he did, and she is like super mad at him afterwards for trying to like mess her up when she was like doing her first ever locker room interview and stuff. And he just like wants to go out with her, and she's like, no way, like you're like the biggest jerk on the planet, like I'm not gonna go out with you. And he finally ends up persuading her because her boss wants her to get this like solo interview from him, and he doesn't do a lot of interviews. And so he finally says like, I'll do the interview if you know, come out like to dinner with me or whatever. And she goes out and like literally dresses like a grandma because she's like, fine, I'll come on this one date with you, but that's it. And I just really love this one. I loved their banter at the beginning. I thought it was really good. I just really haven't read a football romance in a long time, so this was a nice little, like, sort of journey back into the sports world, I guess. Next, I read Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating by Christina Lauren, and this one I've had on my radar for a long time. I know people talk about this one all the time, and I just, like, never picked it up. Finally decided to. I did really like this one, gave it 4 stars. I liked that, specifically in this one, that I find quirky is a word that is, like, way overused in the romance world. Like, I feel like people always try to say, oh, this girl's quirky because she, I don't know, like, has her hair in a ponytail, like, stupid things, and they're like, oh, she's so quirky, and I just, like, hate that. But I feel like I liked that this book, Hazel is actually, like, you know, very eccentric and outgoing and a little bit out there, and I liked that that was, like, her personality. Like, it wasn't just, oh, she's weird, like, it was, no, she's having fun and she likes to do these kinds of things. I liked that aspect. I love how Josh just, like, didn't care when other people were like, Hazel, you're being embarrassing, and he was like, what the heck are you talking about? Like, and they're just, like, best friends. I just really love this one. It was really, really cute. I'm, like, sorry I waited so long to read this one because I did really like it. And the last book for this video is Sicko by Amo Jones, and this one was just something else. I gave this one 3.5 stars, and I'm still not even sure about that rating. Like, I don't know how I feel about that. I know a lot of people love this one, but for me, I just felt like I spent so much of this book being confused and at the same time still guessed who was responsible for what was going on at the end. And so I'm like, how can I be that confused and still be able to guess the ending? And I didn't like that. There were parts of it that I liked. I will, like, say that. Like, there'd be, like, a chapter here or there where I'd be like, okay, like, I can get on board with this, and then something else would happen and I'd be like, wait, what? Because it just, I didn't feel like it was explained well enough, and I feel like that was kind of the point, but at the same time, I wasn't confused in the sort of way where I was like, oh, what happens next? Like, I want to know. I was just confused as to what was even, like, happening in a scene that they were showing, you know? Like, they'd be like, oh, this is blah, 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 and I'm like, okay, but what just happened? Like, I don't even get it. And I don't know, maybe that's just me, maybe this just, like, really wasn't a book for me. I've never read a motorcycle club book either, so I think that might have had, like, a little bit to do with it, because I didn't understand a lot of that. But I don't know, wasn't it for me. But anyway, those are all the books I have read in the first half of November. Obviously I'll have a end of the month wrap up at the end of the month, and so that is everything for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below. I do new book videos every single week, and I will see you next time.